Okay. Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday night. I'm Anjanette, and a lot of you have probably been on here before. It's been a while since I've done one of these, and I think the last one I did was in maybe November, early December. So I've been meaning to get back on here, and the last one I did was on the Pike County case. And a lot's happened since then. It's been a pretty active several weeks in the case. Um, so the last time I was on here talking about this case, there was this kind of explosive hearing on November 20th where the special prosecutor in the case, Angie Canepa, got very upset because the visiting judge, Jonathan Hein, he's a retired judge from Darke County, Ohio, had removed the death specs from Billy Wagner's case. And she was red hot about that. He said that there was no reason to keep those in place because the trial was going to start on January 6th. And Jake and Angela had already agreed to testify, according to her, against Billy Wagner. There's no need to seat a death penalty jury. What else? There was all these outstanding death penalty motions that they would never get through in time, et cetera, et cetera. So Angie Canepa wanted to have him removed from the case. She went to the Ohio Supreme Court. The Ohio Supreme Court shot that down. Then she went back and asked to have him removed again because she said that she had travel plans and he scheduled a hearing, and the victim's advocate for the Rhoden family also had travel plans and wouldn't be able to be there, and that he was biased toward the state. And she was shot down again. So the sentencing proceeded, and it was eventful, to say the very least. So I thought we should all go through that. I would play a little bit of that for you. Let's get on here. I'll read some of your comments first. Grandma Ack says judge is awful. Andy, hi there. I am grateful I got a live stream. I'm grateful to be doing this. Michael, everything's going well. Been busy. And is it Graciela Gracie? I love that. Graciela Gracie G. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see. So anyway, yeah, so this has been it's been very eventful. And I held off on coming on here and talking about this. There's a lot of cases I want to come on here and talk about, but I held off on coming on here and talking about this because this happened on a Friday, the sentencing, and I could have come on maybe on that following Saturday, but I really felt like I just needed some time to think about it because I felt like I was watching this at work. I was doing two other things while I was watching the hearing. I was keeping track of the hearing, and then I wanted to kind of watch it again, and I did because I put together a podcast on it, my Crime Fix podcast for work at Law and Crime. And I felt like I really needed to just watch it again, watch the hearing. And I felt like I literally had to process what I had watched because it was a lot before I actually said anything about it. There were some things that I thought were a little concerning. That apparently the victims in the case were given 10 minutes to speak. And I'm still confused as to whether or not that meant collectively, like, hey, victims get 10 minutes and that's it, which I found that to be quite shocking because victims do have rights in Ohio. And I just feel like if they all wanted to talk and speak to the court, they should have been allowed to do so. But that didn't happen. So let's start at the very beginning, though, this hearing. I'm going to put it up on the screen. And I'm casual Saturday night here. So I just figured I'd come on and be totally cash with you guys. So let me put this up here for you. I kind of want to start at the very beginning of the hearing. I'm not going to play like every second of it. We'll go to kind of the the most important parts. Yeah, Webby, I think it was probably collective too, but I just didn't understand it because that seems unnecessary. So let's oh, wrong button here. Let's put this up at the beginning. So here we are in the courtroom. Ron O'Brien, he's the special prosecutor. He's in there. Greg Meyer, you guys probably can't see my cursor either. I'm kind of pointing with my little cursor on my computer, and I'm sure you can't see it. Yeah, we'll get to Billy Girl. We'll get to Jake's message to the family. It was, yikes! It was something. It made me want to go back and get my notebooks from, and I still have them obviously, from Jake's testimony from the trial. Because the thing still boggles my mind that Judge Deering allowed Jake and Angela as co-defendants to opt out under that rule that allows witnesses to say they don't want to be videotaped, photographed, or have their audio broadcast. I personally, in the state of Ohio, covering trials, I have never seen that happen where we didn't at least get the audio. And these aren't like typical witnesses that would exercise that right. These are co-defendants, co-conspirators who have pleaded guilty to their roles in 8 murders. So I'm still like flabbergasted that was even allowed and that the state even thought it. I thought it was absurd. And we, as the media, collectively hired a lawyer, Jack Reiner, who's a great First Amendment lawyer, to go in there and try to reason with them. The prosecution argued against it, like, oh, we're putting in danger and blah, blah. Oh, come on. Everybody already knows who they are. They're going to prison. Everybody's going to know who they are. I mean, come on. Oh, you're saying my sound is muffled? That's not good. It'll be just fine. I'm on my Shure mic and got my little box here. Is that better, guys? Here, let me try something really quickly. How about this, guys? Is this still bad? Check 1, 2. Oh, it's muffling my audio. Okay. Let's do this. Is that better? How about we stop? I'll pause the video while I'm talking. Okay. So I paused the video while I'm talking. There's no, there's no audio on the video right now, or the audio is very low. So I didn't think that would actually be an issue. So maybe that was the problem. So I apologize. Anyway, I still can't believe that Judge Deering permitted that. It's permitted Jake and Angela to opt out. And I wanted to get out my notebooks. I read some of the web stories I wrote at the time, and it made me think back to Jake's testimony, and I can still see him up there on the witness stand. And it was just an unbelievable sight. After watching Jake in this hearing and what he said and how he said it and the way he did it, it made me think back to his testimony. And I still wish you all could have seen it, and just how he's just ice cold, and he doesn't, I still don't believe he actually thinks that he did anything wrong. And if he does think he did anything wrong, that he's been saved and forgiven. So, and maybe he has. I mean, I'm not in charge of that and what that means, but anyway. So let's talk a little bit about this. Let me go back to where we were a second ago. So you've got Greg Myers there. He's the gentleman on the right with the beard. He is Jake's now former public defender. He apparently retired. Jake's new lawyer, the new public defender or assistant, whatever he is, for the public defender's office in Ohio. He's standing there, but Greg Meyer was actually there, which I didn't realize. And then we've got Ron O'Brien standing over there. He's the special prosecutor. So let's get to a little bit of the hearing. And I'll scroll through this a little bit. So the Rhoden family members come in. So Rita comes in. Angie Kneppa's there. Ryan Scheiderer. They're bringing Angela Wagner in. There, of course, was no opting out of this. So they can't say, I don't understand why they were allowed to opt out of being on video and audio for testifying. But hey, they're coming in for this sentencing. They can't opt out. You know, if we had had a different judge for George's trial, it probably wouldn't have happened.
CR 154, State of Ohio.
Okay, so here comes Judge Hein. He comes in, and Judge Hein. Judge Hein is the new visiting judge. As I said, he's from Darke County, and he, you can tell he was going to come in this day, and he was going to let everybody know who is in charge of this courtroom. So I'm going to play this, and we're going to go from there. I'll answer your question about whether or not I think that Angela is the mastermind here in a bit.
Versus Edward Jake Wagner. The cases are set for sentencing today. Mr. O'Brien, I'm sorry, he's not here. Ms. Kneppa's here on behalf of, there he is. Mr. O'Brien, how are you?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm not appointed on that case. It's scheduled for sentencing.
Okay.
So I will not participate.
You're welcome to sit wherever you like. Appreciate your experience. Ms. Kneppa's here on behalf of the state. I'll introduce the defense lawyers as the cases are called forward. I asked everybody to say the Pledge of Allegiance this morning as an acknowledgement that this is a government function.
Okay, I didn't play that part, but that threw me. I've never seen anybody, a judge, do that. Let's play that really quickly. I was shocked when this happened. Okay, here we go.
Which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go ahead and be seated. Good morning.
Okay, I really don't think I've ever seen that before, ever. I don't think I've ever seen that. a judge have everybody do the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just don't remember ever seeing that. It reminds me of back in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial when Judge Schrader had everybody, one of the witnesses was a veteran and it was Veterans Day and he had everybody clap for them or something. It sort of reminded me of that, but not really. I mean, it's just kind of weird.
There's some legal matters to take care of with regard to Angela's case and Jake's case. Best way to introduce them that way. So I'll take care of those preliminary matters after the sentencing involving Rita Newcomb, because that's a relatively straightforward case. But with regard to the legal matters, what I'll do then is this. First, have the state make a recommendation on all three cases, have the victim's statement on all three cases, sentence Ms. Newcomb after hearing from her lawyer and her. Then I'll switch to Angela Wagner's case, work on merger, then I'll work on Jake Wagner's case with regard to merger and sentencing. So we're going to do one state recommendation, we're going to do one victim statement that applies to all of them, and then we're going to individually sentence three people.
Okay, so he's like, this is what we're doing. You know, we're doing one victim statement that applies to all three, and this is what we're doing. Which is wild. Let's go ahead a little farther. Okay, here we go. And now it's about to get hot. So here we go.
Identity or their statement to be televised. They have the right to confidentiality. So I just need to know for the media how you want to do that.
Your Honor, there are actually going to be 4 victims that would like to address the court and for the Constitution and their rights, because they do have the right to be heard in public proceeding involving sentencing, especially. And I can get citations for that if you'd like, but TR is actually not going to speak. It is going to be for others. I believe Angie Canepa is reading 2 of those statements on behalf of the victims. And then there's a mother that would like to speak and a niece that would like to speak.
So let's have an understanding.
Yes, Your Honor.
I just wanted to know first whether they wanted to be seen or not. So can you answer that for me?
They have no objection to being recorded.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now, the second.
Okay. I get it. Yeah, she didn't really answer the question asked, but yikes. Okay, so we'll continue.
The question would be, why at the 12th hour you tell me that you have other victims and you entered appearances for people who haven't entered appearances on? I'm going to give you what you want to a point, because the obligation to come in and represent people doesn't mean to come in and change the script. So there's 10 minutes allocated to whatever 4 people are going to speak. I just need to have an identity for the record. If you want to use initials and give the court reporter their names, that'd be fine. But like you entering an appearance on behalf of somebody that doesn't want to speak really doesn't work for me. So don't answer that. Just understand that I'll give your 4 people 10 minutes and I want their identity, and you want to give me initials, that's fine. Just write down their name so I have it for the record. Understand? Do you understand? Do you understand?
Yes, I need to make a clear record for purposes.
So you can make the record after we're done. Now, do you understand what I just said?
Yes, and I'm.
Thank you. Okay, then sit down. Thank you. So, with regard to Ms. Newcomb's case, it's Mr. Gerlach, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Nice to meet you. So appreciate your representation, Mr. Gerlach. Any questions about the process? This recommendation from the state on all 3 cases, then the victim, then your statement, your defendant's statement, and then I'll sentence. Understand all that?
That's
Does
correct.
that work for you?
Yes.
Okay, good enough. So Ms. Canepa, go ahead.
I just want to clarify, Your Honor, if you want me to make a recommendation for Ms. Newcomb.
Okay, so now things are going to get really hot. So some of you have probably seen this before. I don't know if all of you have, but it was really something.
All 3.
Okay.
And keep in mind, this is right after the second affidavit of disqualification Angie Canepa had filed was denied. And she had accused him of some pretty untoward stuff. None of us were there in chambers in what she discussed, but, um, you know, she's appealing his ruling on removing the death specs. She tried to have him thrown off the case twice. I guess he could have told the Ohio Supreme Court, "Hey, I don't need this. I'm done," but he didn't. And the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court kept him on.
I would like to first place on the record, Your Honor, I did not file a written sentencing memorandum as to however, I am making the same objection to the title of the sentencing that I made in both Angela and Jacob Wagner's case, specifically, Your Honor, as this court knows, based on Gilbert holding. The agreement at the time that these agreements were reached between the parties, there was also an agreement that the sentencing would be delayed until after the disposition or resolutions of all of the remaining co-defendants in the case. It was moved from this time in 2015.
Are you going to make a recommendation on sentencing?
I am, Your Honor.
I got your objection. It's been in the record 5 times. I don't need to hear it again. It's overruled. So please make your recommendation.
The court is going to overrule me, but I need to make a record.
So, Mr. O'Brien, be ready to stand in, because there's no public debate today. The argument I'm hearing from your co-counsel has been beaten dead. It's been beaten dead. I asked her to make a sentencing recommendation.
Okay.
I asked her previously not to talk over me. The next thing that happens is she'll move to the back of the courtroom, and after that she'll be escorted out of the building, in which case you need to be ready to step in, because I'm not interested in old hash. She objected so many times, I have it in my sleep. I don't need it again. It's in the record. So I'm going to ask her again to make a sentencing recommendation on all 3 cases. If that doesn't work, then I'll take some disciplinary action. It's really easy to follow the rules until you don't have respect for the rules. So there's no debate today. We're just going to do this. I'd like you to be ready to step in case it doesn't work for her. Understand?
Yes, Your Honor, only thing I would say for the record is that I'm not privy to the previous plea agreements on Jake and Angela and Newfound, so I need some time to review those before I really require them.
I understand. Thank you. They're all in writing. Thanks.
And at least I think that Ms. Canepa should be ready to proceed.
I hope so.
Recommendations on
Yeah.
all 3 cases.
That's what I asked for. Now, recommendations.
Certainly, Your Honor. Regarding Ms. Newcomb, Your Honor, I'm deferring to the court.
Okay. So obviously, this judge, in my mind, made a decision after the 2 affidavits of disqualification were filed by Angie Canepa and were denied. He has made a decision that he is going to show her. And I don't know if any of you saw the November 20th hearing. She was pretty upset with him and said that he was biased and trying to sabotage her case. And then she filed those documents with the Ohio Supreme Court. I think he was like, I'm coming in here and I am going to be very clear and I'm going to show everybody in this courtroom who's running this courtroom. And it's me. And I think that was his goal that day. I don't know that for certain. I have never met this man. This is the first time I've ever seen him preside over a case. And this is a very high profile case, the most high profile case going in Ohio right now. But I have heard from another person in another county. Judge Hein is presiding over a case in which this person is involved in, and he doesn't like him at all. I mean, this isn't a lawyer; it's just a person involved in it's not a criminal case; it's a civil case, and he doesn't like Judge Hein at all. So it is. He is clearly saying to Angie Canepa and all of the other lawyers involved, because I feel like after this happened, all of the other lawyers were like walking on eggshells. I don't think they didn't seem as comfortable as usual. But maybe I'm wrong about that. But wow, yeah, it was something to watch. So we're going to fast forward a little bit, and we're going to go to the first victim impact statement, which came from Hannah Hazel Gilley's mother, Andrea Shoemaker Carver. And, this is a woman who's been waiting now almost 9 years to speak to Jake and Angela Wagner to let them know how much pain they have caused her in losing her daughter and her Frankie Rhoden, who would have been her son-in-law. So we will play that, and she was. I'll let you decide how you feel about
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Just stand, if you would. Right there is fine. The court reporter is the most important person here. She needs to hear what happened, so go ahead. Thank you.
And Mr. Shoemaker, I'm Hannah Hazel Gilley's mom. You three helped plan, carry out, and murder my grandson, Rupert, who was 6 months old, laying in the bed between his mom and dad. Frankie, Rhoden, and Hazel Gilley, let alone your granddaughter's mother. How greedy of a grandmother are you? How greedy. You killed your granddaughter's mother. You're evil. You're evil. You are the spawn of Satan. And the Satan is Billy Wagner. You are the evilest mother to help plan, carry out, and take the lives of 3 other mothers. My daughter was only 20, and you want 30 years of your life behind bars. 30? She was 20! 20! She never even got to buy alcohol. She got 6 months of her life with her kids. 6 months. And Hannah Mae Rhoden, the love of your life, Jake Wagner, the love of your life, your daughter's mother, she got 4 days. Kylie Rhoden got 4 days. Do you know what kind of questions I had to answer? First, it was bad people came in. Next, they see your faces on the news. So guess what? I had to explain more. Because they're not little kids no more. They're not 6 months old. They're not 4 days old. Rupert's soon to be 10. 10 years he's been without a daddy to teach him how to fish, to teach him how to hunt, to do all the man things. He has to depend on uncles, cousins. Because of you, Jake. Greedy Jake Wagner. You. I want you to suffer. This is what I want. And I've told all BCI. I want your mother to live and you boys to die as well as your dad. I want you to die so your mom feels the heartache of what it's like to bury a child. It's a heartache that never goes away. I hate you. You ruined my life. You ruined innocent children's lives. I hope you die. I pray every day you die. I pray your grandchildren and your children never want anything to do with you. And I hope they never do. I hope your daughter hates you with a passion and as much heart as I hate you, Jake Wagner. You shook my hand and acted as if you was my fucking friend. After you shot my daughter 5 times in the head. 5 times, man, Wagner, son laid between them. And Hannah Mae, she's holding her little girl. And you shot her. How cold and evil. You are a spawn of Satan. I'll say it again. Spawns of Satan, you and your brother. And you, evilness, created them. And Miss Rita, I feel so sorry for you because I know you're ashamed to have such a daughter and grandsons that evil. Because you was the first to feel the guilt and said you were sorry, and it was your Christian duty to tell the truth. So I have not very many words for you. My heart breaks for you to have such an evil, control, and response of Satan.
Thank you, Mr. Maker. Who's next?
Actually, Your Honor, Ms. Canepa has 2 written statements that they requested she read, and then I do have one more live statement
Thank you.
from Lisa Weisel.
Okay, so that was I remember when this first was broadcast, I just it like kind of took my breath away because I can't imagine the pain that they went through. First of all, this happening at all because it was so horrific and grotesque. I mean, getting a call that not only has your daughter been murdered, but her fiance, the father of your grandson, and then all of their family members. And remember the trial testimony from George's trial was that they were shot because they were there, not because they had no role in any of this. I mean, there was no reason. There was nothing. There was no reason for any of these people to die. They were simply shot because they were there. And it's just really, really sick. I just can't imagine the pain that she is going through. I'm gonna skip past what Angie Canepa reads because it's just so incredibly hard to hear. And then I'll go to Lisa Weisel. But yeah, I can't imagine Andrea Shoemaker having to tell her grandson or the questions that he has. I mean, I'm sure he has a lot of questions. And it's horrific. So I don't think I can see why she feels the way she does. And I can't say that I disagree with her. I mean, because if you think about it, Angela, the trial testimony is that this whole thing starts because Angela has hacked into Tabby's mom's Facebook and Hannah's Facebook. I mean, like, who does that? It's insane. And she's reading the Facebook messages, which is totally psycho. And she sees that December 2015 message from Hannah Mae, where she tells, Tess, the mother of Tabby, basically says, don't let them ever do to you what they did to Tabby. Don't let them take your child. And she said, oh, I'd never do that. They'd have to kill me first. So Angela apparently goes and shows this message to Jake. And, it's like, oh, they take it literally, like, oh, I guess we're going to have to kill her. Like, who does that? Nobody does that. That is insane. It's just absolutely, absolutely insane. It's insanity. So Angela Wagner to me is like, it all starts with her. She is the one that stirred everybody up. I mean, it's just nuts. Here's Lisa Weisel.
I am the niece of Chris and Kenneth and Nathan. I am going to be speaking on behalf of the Rhoden family today. My family feels very strongly that some people have lost sight of what has brought us to this courthouse over and over again, year after year. Let me quickly remind you of the magnitude, the severity of this tragedy. This monstrous crime is the largest mass murder in Ohio. 8 people were brutally murdered, 2 young mothers and 1 young father. And I'm going to drop the babies, please, I do. It is nearing the 9-year anniversary, and I assure you, no one wants justice more than our family. However, we do not agree with making hasty decisions to get it over with. We want all responsible parties to be showing them mercy, just like our family is showing them mercy. We can only pray that actions that take place in this courtroom today will not dismantle the justice that still has not been served. The Wagner family are master manipulators. They will tell what the lies. To fit their narrative. They are a true danger to society, and this crime is nothing to be taken lightly or play jeopardy with. And on behalf of me, and what I have to say, Jake, we are no longer a family. You said that over and over. We will always be family. No, we will not. I will no longer ever think of you after today. When those doors close behind you, you will be an afterthought to the rest of our family.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner.
Okay. Now, I have to point something out because I failed to mention it. Thank you, Skady. I hope I'm saying that right for the reminder. Andrea Shoemaker, who you heard from before, she's actually the grandmother of Hannah Mae Rhoden's daughter, the 4-day-old that she was had next to her when she was murdered. I'm not going to use the girl's name because she's old enough to, I don't know, maybe be on YouTube. I don't, but anyway, so yes, she had 2 grandchildren whose mothers were murdered. It's horrific. So, and if you listen, you didn't hear Jake's testimony. Jake talked about how Hannah Mae saw him, and gasped. So I think there's probably more that took place and transpired in that moment because she was awake. She was trying to breastfeed the baby. And so the baby was next to her. And he said that Hannah Mae saw him and gasped, whether she knew it was him or not. But I have to think that part of me just thinks I could see him saying something to her just because it would be like the ultimate final act of control that he would have over her. Just absolutely sickening. But the crime scene photos, Hannah Mae's, her eyes were open. It's horrific. So here we get to Rita. Rita doesn't really say anything. She had already said that she couldn't lie anymore during her plea hearing. That was years ago, that she couldn't lie anymore. She couldn't take it. She's Christian.
Can stay good. I don't have to, but I do pay the fine.
So she had questions. I thought the judge was a little harsh. She's trying to ask questions, and I thought he was a little rude to her, but.
Correction. My apologies. I'm not called. Thank you. Ms. Canepa? Right ahead.
Okay, so he sentences her. We don't need to really go through Rita's stuff. She basically, got what she got. All right, so now Angela's really hard to hear too, so I'll try to play this, and I'll just skip past it. But her lawyer said basically that she had been mentoring people. We'll listen to Bob Craypence talk because I.
Right ahead.
Your Honor, thank you. First, with respect to maybe some murder issues, I've suggested in my sentencing memorandum that there are 2 sets of 2 counts each that we believe should be merged for purposes of sentencing. That was counts 16 and 18, as I recall, and I think 20 and 21. If I can read my writing here.
All right, I don't care about merger issues. I care about what he says about Angela.
These folks. That said, she was aware of it. She took her own steps to try to assist in that plan. And that is something that she has taken responsibility for. In addition to taking responsibility, she has come into this court and she's testified against her son. And that was a task that was not very easy for her. It was important for her to do so, but it was also very important for the state. The state knew that the remaining cases after Jake had entered his plea were still not 100%, not an absolute win, because one person saying something sometimes without corroboration isn't enough to sway a jury to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. It's very important for them to have Ms. Wagner come in and testify and corroborate the testimony, the evidence, and the facts that Jake had testified to. Toward that end, after Jake had proffered, we never let Angela review the statement, the proffer, because we wanted to keep a clean wall between the 2 of them, such that she would not parry him back what somebody else had said. And I think it proved her value to the state as a witness. And it's because of those efforts that the state entered into this agreement, which I know the state probably didn't like. but I felt it was necessary, and I think that they probably made the right call. Ms. Wagner has lived up to her end. She will continue to live up to her end of the deal, which again, doesn't bind this court. I do want the court to know that she has provided me this morning with a list and some certifications of completion of some programs that she's taken while she's been incarcerated for a very lengthy time in Delaware County. And I count offhand, I'm not going to read them all, but I count probably 40 to 50 different programs that she has completed. She has found something of a niche that she's been in one place so long. She's been, entrusted to act as a trustee, but also has taken it upon herself to mentor young women who come in to jail, and then they come out, and they come back in, and she's told me many stories about the revolving door of women that she's met and been able to help. I believe that she, for the next more than almost 25 years of her life, will have a purpose. I know that she is the type of person who will listen, who will help to counsel, who will try to direct younger women into the right direction, a path that she hopes that they will take. She has done as much as she can possibly do to improve herself, her situation, and to give back. She has written a statement at the appropriate time. I would ask the court to allow her to read that as well. All that to say, Your Honor, I believe that the jointly recommended sentence is appropriate. I know that in the plea agreement, we had agreed to a specific sentence for each of these counts. However, as my addendum to the sentencing memorandum indicated, I don't think that we can follow that because of how the Supreme Court has interpreted the law with regard to firearms investigations. I did include, it was yesterday at some point, a suggestion of how to arrive at the same.
Okay, so apparently Angela Wagner has been very busy while she's been in jail. She's gotten some certificates. She's a trustee, which, she's been institutionalized. It sounds like it's almost been kind of a good thing for her. She's taken to getting these certifications, probably completing some courses. The mentoring thing boggles my mind a little bit. I don't know what that entails, but we saw how she treated Hannah May. Apparently, she treated Hannah May allegedly better than Tabby, according to Tabby. Like, Hannah May was the favored one, but look what she ended up doing to Hannah May. My God. So it's just like, what kind of mentoring is, like, what is she advising young women to do, or what is she doing? Like, hopefully it's, hey, don't do what I did. Hopefully it's like, actually, if you're reading the Bible, actually interpret it properly. Don't use it for your twisted motives. Another thing too, Angela, I feel like Angela has some serious mental illness, not because of just this whole conspiracy to murder 8 people. Remember, I mean, you may not remember, you don't remember because you didn't get to see it, unfortunately. But she was convinced, apparently, that Tabby was trying to poison them. She has this like delusion. I don't know if it's a delusion or just something she tells herself to justify, because she did it with Beth too, Jake's wife from Alaska. But she apparently believed and told Jake that Tabby was putting like dog hair in their coffee. Like they like these coffees or whatever, and like crazy nonsense like that. I mean, it's like, I guarantee you Tabby was not putting dog hair in their coffee in an effort to poison them. So let's go back to the actual sentencing. I don't know if you'll be able to hear this. It was so quiet. We had to like put subtitles on it for my podcast. We had to, I think they used something where they tried to clean up the audio, and I think they used AI or something. I don't even know. So I think it's going to be too quiet to even hear it.
Perfect person. Always striving for perfection, thinking that was what was wanted of me. All of this had been stuffed down so far that I didn't even know who that woman was. I didn't realize I was so weak and flawed and broken that it would lead me to make rash emotional decisions. That when such a tragic event would happen within my family.
I mean, she admits that she made a rash decision. I mean, it wasn't even rash. I mean, it went on for months, the planning of this whole thing.
I just froze. I couldn't think. I'm not saying this for justification, Connor.
And she talked about striving to be perfect and all of that. I mean, okay. I mean, she joined the Air Force. I mean, I think it's super, I mean, it's horrible. She was apparently horrifically abused as a child, like by her father, Pug. And she went into the the Air Force, pardon me, and she was sexually assaulted, not once, but twice, which is horrible. But still, I mean, I just think you have to get help when these things happen. But I think that probably maybe contributed to her mental health issues, but I don't know. I don't know.
This is why it changed me to say at that point in time, I didn't consider the consequences of those actions you caused.
How do you not consider the consequences of killing 8 people when you're planning it for months? I don't get that.
Or the depth of pain that they would bring upon the Rhodens or others. I know their pain must be unbearable. Because separated from my family, the ones I love most in the world, brings me unbearable, suffocating pain.
See, she brings it back to herself. She you know, she feels for the Rhodens, but then she knows how much pain it causes her to be separated from her family, the people she loves the most. So she kind of brings it back to me.
And for this, I am so truly sorry. I can't undo what's happened. But the regret and the remorse that I feel is my daily reminder of who I once was and who I do not ever want to be again. Thankfully today, I'm not that woman. I've committed myself to change, to growth, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, to letting God be my guidance. Each day I work on being a better me, rewiring my brokenness, looking for a purpose so I can be filled with wisdom, knowing to slow down, to listen, and to ponder so I don't get carried away with any emotional decisions again. I'm not looking for perfection anymore. Now my desires and goals are for continuance of growth, for sharing the compassion and unconditional love to others.
Okay. So I think that's enough.
Have a seat.
So Angela talks about making an emotional decision. I mean, was it an emotional decision? An emotional decision to me is something that you do in an instant or, you know, within a few minutes or, I mean, this went on for months, like December of 2015 is when she sees this Facebook message from Hannah Mae. I mean, months. I mean, like, is that an emotional? Yeah, I guess you could say emotion went into it, but it's more about like, I want that child. I'm going to control this, and you decide you're going to take out a whole family. It's bonkers. It's beyond bonkers. It's sick. It's just nonsense. So let's listen to what the judge tells her.
So, Mr. Craypence, let me start with you. Thank you. I don't think the public understands the stress on the lawyers for both sides of the case. I also don't think the public appreciates the fact that without defense lawyers, there wouldn't be a prosecution. Because in our adversarial system, as much love as the state might get, the defense lawyers seem to get the opposite. Yet you step into those shoes, and in this case, I've seen very capable lawyers working very difficult facts, often without any appreciation. So to the extent that you and Mr. Hunt did a fine job, you ought to at least be publicly acknowledged. So thank you very much for a long career.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So that to me, I'm just like, if Bob Craypence doesn't say thank you, he's probably going to get like tossed in the pokey, but I'm kidding. But anyway.
The first part of the hearing when the victims were speaking was what I expected. A built up raw emotion of rancor and ill will, and all very understandable and unfortunate. if anything cathartic can come out of today, it might be of the fact that there's some closure, or maybe not forgiveness, not forgetting, but the fact that the process will have worked and people can move on, whether you choose to accept.
Okay. So I've, been covering criminal cases for years now and interviewed many, many survivors, victims of homicide, the loved ones who've lost their loved ones to homicide. There is never closure, and you can move forward. And you can move forward, and you can find ways to do that. I advise any victim, any loved one of somebody who's lost somebody to homicide to get counseling, to talk to somebody, because I think it can be very helpful in trying to move forward. You don't ever move on. You don't have closure. There's no closure. This sentencing allows them to, it closes a chapter. And then if Billy's trial ever gets underway and he's convicted and there's a sentencing there, that will, because these families have been through hell. I mean, they've been going to court way too long. I remember very clearly, and I'd have to look it up because I think the web story is still out there. This is when I still worked in local news. One of the Rhoden family members, one of the sisters, and I'm not going to say her name because at the time she didn't want us using her name. She didn't want to be on camera. But I remember they all traveled out there to Pike County for one of the hearings. And it was one of those days where there's supposed to be a hearing and something's actually supposed to happen. And then they come out after they've been in chambers for over an hour and they say, oh, yeah, okay, we're going to set a new date. And nothing happens. Nothing happened. And she was so upset. She brought us all out into the parking lot. And she was just like, how much longer is this going to have to go on? Like, she was so angry that it was taking so long, that the process was moving so slowly, that it was like trudging through, mud with concrete blocks on their feet. I mean, it was just like nothing was happening. And now the arrests were in November of 2018. We are now at January of 2025, and we still have one more trial to go. I mean, it's got to be absolutely maddening, because every time they have to go back to court, it's like ripping open a scab. I mean, can you imagine? So it's just absolutely, absolutely horrific. So, and they still have one more trial to go. And it's like, I just can't even imagine. So that was back, I don't know if that was 2019 that happened, the incident in the parking lot. I mean, we were all out there, all the reporters, and we were all just like listening to her because she was so upset. I mean, she was just like, and I didn't blame, I mean, how can you blame her? I mean, it was insane. So let's continue. There's never any closure, but they can somehow, and I don't, move forward. I think therapy is a good thing, things like that, but let's listen to the judge.
That or not is yours, as any free person can, but maybe closure helps. There was a reference to this being the worst massacre in the state of Ohio. Well, let's go with something else. To call this the Pike County Massacre, frankly, is condescending to the rest of the good people of Pike County.
I mean, this was a massacre. It's horrific. But I'll play the rest for you.
It's tragic, it's heinous, it's unexcusable, but it's not an indictment of the entire county. That's social media typecasting. The worst massacre in Ohio might very well be 1792 at Canada Hutton, when 96 Christian pacifists were killed by the Pennsylvania militia because they were Christian pacifists. But each generation has its own people who can prove the depths of depravity of human nature. And that's what this case did. It showed the boundless depravity of people who have no respect for others and their only self-interest in mind. And that's transgenerational since the...
Okay. So I'm just not so sure that was necessary. I mean, I mean, I feel like it kind of, I mean, I don't think anybody in the courtroom knows what he's talking about. This is about the Rhodens. This day is about the Hannah Hazel Gilley and the Rhoden family. So I was kind of like, wow. But what he said to Angela Wagner, I thought was pretty poignant. So we'll get to that.
Dawn of man, this sort of depravity happens. So the raw emotion you communicated was expected is unfortunate, and I hope somehow you're able to get past it. Not forgetting, but getting above it. But good luck, because what I just asked isn't easy, as you well know.
Okay, they're never going to get past it or above it, but they can try to somehow move forward. I just, yikes. I mean, I'm just like, whoa, okay, here we go.
With regard to sentencing, however, the court's not bound by nor has any role in using emotion. The government's responsibility is not to use ill will. We don't have people being burned at the stake as in the medieval days. We don't have public shaming. We don't have a remedy that works.
I mean, we kind of do have public shaming. It's called social media. I feel like that happens, but I feel like some of this is a little, talking to victims like this is a little bit like, yikes. It's a little insensitive. It's victims of homicide are, you have to handle them very delicately.
We have analytical guidelines the courts are supposed to follow.
Okay. I want to get to him talking to Angela.
You need to understand that there's a mutually recommended sentence. If I impose the mutually recommended sentence, then any opportunity you might have to appeal the sentence is waived or given up. Generally, when a person enters a plea of guilty, they give up any rights to appeal the verdict of guilt. So presumably you don't have appeal rights as to your plea. If I impose the sentence today as recommended, then there's no appeal rights on that issue. The only thing that might be left, dare I say it, would be ineffective assistance of counsel, and I don't have any opinion on that. So if I impose a mutually recommended sentence, your appeal rights are waived as to the sentence. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
And that's what's going to happen. I lined up the numbers differently than the lawyers recommended, but they come up to the mutually recommended 30 years. So for purposes of the record, with regards to count number 9.
Okay, we don't care about this part, but I care about what he said to Angela.
Reign, if you will, to impose sentence when in fact we have pages and pages and volumes of rules and case authority on how to impose a sentence. So the Beatty case tells me that there's a mandatory duty with regard to the firearm specification, a separate felony 5 offense. Morally, that's up. To the extent that I wasn't bound by the lawyers, I could have gone higher. I wasn't here when this started. The analysis is pretty true. The state needed you. And in fact, you came through with your part of the agreement. Does that matter? Well, morally, that's up to you. Legally, it's a big deal. In my journal entry, there's 2 cases cited that clearly explain the importance of cooperation, the benefits of mitigation. You help the state make the case. Jake helped the state make its case. That wisdom, wherever it came from, was the difference between a much worse outcome that might very well have been appropriate. I understand you didn't go to the 4 scenes. Nobody seems to talk about the fact that you're the only person that could have stopped the whole thing with one phone call.
You're standing there with cell phones that people want you to ping to make it look like you're home. All you have to do is call in. Stop the whole thing. The depravity was that you didn't see the moral need to shut it all down. I don't need an explanation, but clearly, any decent human being could have done that little bit to save so much. So with the fact that you accepted responsibility and cooperated, I was willing to follow the agreement. You'll see the Anderson case and the Rahab case is cited in the decision. They go back to 2017 case. The Supreme Court made it really clear twice in the same term the importance in the system of having people accept responsibility and cooperate. So for you, that's the only silver lining. I would conclude that case, Ms. Wagner. They're going to side door, moving on.
Okay, so basically, the judge, in my opinion, kind of let her have it as much as he could. He basically told her he thought she was horrendous and scummy and basically scum. He thinks she's horrible. So, you know, he thinks she's absolutely awful. And you know what? He's right. So now we get to Jake. And I was just flabbergasted.
So, each and every one of you, not all of you, obviously, but I've had friendship or relationships with a lot of many. And I know full well that the weight of my crimes, what I've done to you and your family. There's no amount of apology I can give today, no amount of explanation, no thing I can do to help you use the pain you have, loss, anger, hate. Nothing can save that. But I'm not going to tell you, oh, this, and that. I'm going to tell you about me. Because, yeah, I used to be a manipulator. Ms. Gilley affirmed that, and I truly was. But after I committed this crime, I was still a killer. Ms. Gilley, I'm going to look at you because I feel you have the most hate. And this is for you. So whenever I committed those crimes, it was probably 2 or 3 weeks later, I was weighted down with the guilt I did. And I said the most sincere prayer to that day I ever said to that day. And I asked God. I didn't like what I did. Didn't like how I was living. Didn't like how the possibility of my daughter or even my nephew would grow up to be. And I asked God. I said, put me and my family back on the straight and narrow path by any means necessary. Any. And I can tell you today, I am not sorry I got caught. I'm sorry for what I've done. But I am glad I got caught. I 100% believe that it was Jesus who made me get caught to answer my prayer so he could become exactly who he's supposed to be to each of us, the Lord, Savior. Because, Skilly, now I don't show much emotion. Not in me. But quite every night, you've seen God, I do. I don't show much here. I'm kind of breaking up a little bit, but that's just me.
I don't think Jake is capable of emotion, honestly. I mean, unless it's for himself, I don't think he's capable. So I'll just say that.
I can tell you from my own experience, hate will not heal your heart. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't. But I ask you, if you are a woman of at least some kind of faith, you should really read the Bible, because hate won't do it. Hate will only condemn yourself. But I want you to know, what I want to tell all of you, is how I was, how I believed, how I truly thought I was going to die and go to heaven prior to being arrested. And how I learned in my own time, alone with Jesus, just him and his word. I set aside every human teaching I was ever taught, even John 3:16. I read the word for myself. John 3:16 don't save you. The Bible don't save you. Only a relationship with Jesus Christ will save you. And he did not promise one place in his word. I don't know how many of you have ever read the Bible. He's never promised he would save you from hell. He promised that he came here to save you from sin, to unleash you from the captivity of sin. We're all weak. We all fall short of the glory of God. I knew that, and I was one of those people who believed, okay, sure, I'm a sinner, I'll sin every day. It's not like, why should I try? Ask forgiveness when I eat, go to sleep, and I'll be good. I wasn't good. That's not what Jesus preaches. Jesus says specifically, you come to me with all your burdens, all your sorrows, all of your pain, and you surrender, and he will heal you. You know, some of you might know the verse which says you must become like a little child, or you by no means enter the kingdom of God. You must repent, or you by no means enter the kingdom of God. Repentance is what I thought prior to actually sitting down and reading the Bible myself. It's not asking for forgiveness. That comes from repentance. Repentance is to choose to look at what you've done, hate it, and forsake it. Forsake sin.
Okay, have you guys heard enough of Jake? I mean, I'm sure. I mean, he literally thinks he's been saved. It's just unbelievable. Maybe he really believes this, but watching him testify, and this is why I wish you guys could have seen it. I really do believe he may truly believe he's been saved, and he's Pastor Jake, that they call him at the jail. I don't know. It's hard to believe that the judge did Graciela at one point tell him to wrap it up. He told him to wrap it up twice, but it felt like Jake got to go on a lot longer than the victims. Yes, it is his sentencing, but he's like preaching to them. They don't need to be preached to. He should say he's sorry. And I mean, he should say, I mean, it's like insane. He's like got an audience. So the judge basically, this is what shocked everybody so much. Like, look at this, like poor Lisa Weisel. She's like, here, this might be where he tells Jake to knock it off.
One thing I want to tell you, Sheriff, not all the details. If I came in contact with another inmate, this is after my plea. And he told me, because I told him, I'm confidential, I'm like, not necessarily how a Catholic priest does it, but what you confess to me, I'm not going to tell no one else. I'm
confidential. Whatever, dude. You're like a jailhouse. You think you're like a jailhouse pastor. You're not confidential. Give me a break. But poor Lisa Weisel, she's sitting here like, look at them. They're like, we can't listen to this anymore. I think this is where he tells Jake to stop it. Oh, no, that's the ambulance. But anyway, look at them. They're like, we can't listen to this any longer.
And I've read so many testimonies how they have brought God's glory through the evil that has happened.
It's like unbelievable. Anyway, so here's the judge who's going to explain what he's about to do, which stunned everybody.
Does not serve. Everything you just said is perfectly appropriate. It's been heard many times before, as has the victim. But to the extent that there's a religious overtone, I don't factor in religious values. It's the same standard. The legal prescriptions, the laws of the government that I impose. I heard remorse. I heard your understanding and your explanation for it. But to the extent that you might, or somebody might have taken that as preaching, that's fine, except it has no meaning to me, except for remorse. If it was more than that, Mr. McVeigh helped me understand, but it just demonstrates that the same ill will and rancor that came from the victims, understandably, is now your faith experience on your side, neither of which is the role of the judge, the duty of the law. So it highlights what goes on in courtrooms on a regular basis.
Your Honor, what I might add, to that, perhaps by way of further explanation, is I believe from
Okay. What? So here we go.
Along the way, as they're allowed to. Count 7, aggravated murder, life in prison. Count 12 months in prison. Count 22, engaging in a pattern of corrupt activity. 12 months in prison. The Chief Justice appoints retired assigned judges to work on cases where there's conflicts or problems. And I take that very seriously. It's a privilege after retirement to be granted the opportunity to come back and continue to help my colleagues. That's why I get out of bed every day. There's a need, there's a problem, maybe a skill to apply to resolve the need and the problem. That's how I got here. We talked about this with your dad months ago. I got 2 problems when I walked into this case. Somebody explained the 2 problems. The first problem was a recommendation on your case that was the same as it was on your brother's, life without parole, which is what he got, right? How did he get there? He went to trial. He had 10 weeks of trial, and he had thousands of dollars and had dozens of witnesses and emotional energy and staff energy, people energy, resources energy to get him to his conviction. Yet the recommendation here is the same, giving you no credit for all the cooperation that you gave. As Mr. McKinney said, you don't have corroboration of a cooperative witness, you may not have any case. So I have to resolve the first problem is how is it that I'm supposed to treat you the same when in fact you didn't act the same? That's the first problem. The second problem is how do I resolve the good deal that your mom got? 30 years is a really long time. That's a really good deal for the level of the conduct, especially since she could have stopped the whole thing dead in its tracks before it ever happened. And I don't let her off the hook because she didn't go to the scene. I put her equally responsible because the eyes of the law put her equally responsible. So my second problem is how do I resolve what looks to me like some sort of gender bias? And here's how I resolve it. I give you the opportunity of parole after 20 years on your prison sentence. So you do 6 on the gun spec, you do 6 on the gun spec, you do life on all the other counts, everything concurrent, with the opportunity of parole at 20 years. So 32 years out, you get your chance because you cooperated, because you did something to acknowledge the responsibility for the crime. That's not a feel, but that's as close as I can come to solving the problem that's handed to me by these ancient plea agreements. If everybody wants the last judge's sentencing deal, they should have sentenced him under the last judge. Everybody knew Judge Deering was gone right after the last trial, but nobody rushed it in to get it. And when I show up, I solve the problems the way I'm supposed to. So you get your chance to talk to the parole board 32 years from now. And then they do their job, whatever it might be. So I'm not going to sign off on a deal where you get the same for cooperating as your brother does for going to trial. There's the explanation. Court costs, processing, booking, paid state medical expenses have to pay as a legal obligation. There's no victim restitution.
Okay, so Jake, like literally, he's like literally shocked. He cannot believe what has happened. You're going to see it here in a second. He's dumbfounded. So, yeah, it doesn't. So here's the deal. Jake gets to He is eligible for parole after 32 years. He's been sentenced to life with parole eligibility in 32 years. He's still sentenced to life in prison, but he gets to go in front of the parole board. I don't think he'll ever get parole. But, I'm going to bring somebody in. I'm going to bring Eric in to talk about this with me. I was dumbfounded when this happened. I get the judges, when the judge lays out his logic. Oh, your brother went to trial and got LWOP. Your mom gets this sweetheart deal of 30 years, which he's right. It was too light of a sentence. I can't believe she got 30 years. I think it's insane. I get what he's saying. And Jake led them to the guns, the truck. I guess he filled in a lot of holes, laid out the timeline, all of that stuff. But still, I'm like, wow. Okay. So parole eligibility in 32 years. That's insane. So it just seems insane. I mean, I get what he's saying. I get it. If you look at it from the fact that Jake was after Rita, and Rita didn't kill anybody. She just lied at Angela's request about notarizing custody documents, but still she committed a crime. Yes, Jake came forward and I guess had his moment. He had this moment where he realized what he had done was horrific. A lot of people will tell you he's just scared to death to possibly get the death penalty. That's really what was his motivation. He knew he wasn't going to beat the case. He knew there was no way he was beating this case. His lawyers probably said to him, there's nothing we can really do for you. You will get the death penalty and you will spend the rest of your life on death row, waiting to see if you'll be executed. Now, nobody ever really gets executed in Ohio. It rarely ever happens. They can't get the drugs. But I mean, they probably told him that. And maybe he did have some type of religious, moment, whatever that means in his mind. But I'm telling you, watching him testify, he was so cold. It was unbelievable. It was absolutely unbelievable how cold he was, and the smirking could have been awkward. There was also this talk, about him being, this head injury. He had suffered a couple of head injuries as a kid. I think there was an ATV accident and his head was split open. And Billy, I was in one of my stories that I wrote, Billy, I think put duct tape on it or something. I mean, it's an insanity. I mean, the kid's messed up. But Jake thought he was spending the rest of his life in prison without parole. So yes, he did cooperate. 32 years out. I don't know. The judge obviously explained his reasoning, but I'm like, okay, maybe like 40 years out. He admitted to personally shooting and killing 5 people. It's pretty stunning. I get the judge's reasoning, but at the same time, the 30 years was just way too light for Angela. I mean, she should never have gotten that good of a deal. I get what her lawyer said. Yes, she came in and corroborated what Jake said. Okay, so maybe they did need her. But was it worth 30 years just because she didn't go to the scenes? She's the one that stirred this whole thing up. I'm going to bring Eric in. So Eric, here, let me unshare my screen, stop screen. So Eric, I know you had a lot of feelings about this. I just kind of explained, I get where the judge is coming from. I get what he's saying, but at the same time, Jake said that he killed personally 5 people and was there obviously for all 8 people, there for the planning. I get his reasoning because Jake did lead them to evidence and testified. But at the same time, this is 8 people. It's 8 people were murdered. So it's a little hard to digest.
And thank you for having me, first of all. And
thanks for coming.
The thing is, it could have been worse. It could have been worse. Everybody was going to die that night. everybody was going to be collateral damage.
Well, yeah, I mean, they said that. Like, apparently, Chris Jr. sometimes had friends sleep over. So if a friend had been there sleeping over, that friend would have been murdered too. I mean, they said that. Like,
Yeah.
everybody was going to be killed. It didn't matter who they were. I mean, the only people who were left alive were the children, the babies and the children.
Yeah, and you've already touched on it, but I want to touch on it too, about his testimony during the trial. Cold, it doesn't even.
I feel like
Well,
he enjoyed it. I feel like he enjoyed talking about it. He kind of
I-
smirked at times.
I think. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if he enjoyed it, but it just flowed so easily, and like what you said it, and he said it, he doesn't show emotion, but he does have that one emotion to where he laughs at all the wrong times.
Yeah, I mean, it could be it could genuinely be like a nervous thing,
Yeah,
but he smirks and starts laughing. The one time I remembered John Parker asked him like, about, you remember like the joke where he would tell people that he would brag that he sold a woman a pregnant chicken. And he started like laughing because it basically meant he could con anybody. I mean, there's no such thing as a pregnant chicken. Chickens lay eggs, but he would often brag to people that he once sold a woman a pregnant chicken because that's how slick he was. He was that good of a manipulator.
right. Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that they went into these 4 crime scenes, and not only did Hannah gasp, but so did Dana,
Yeah, Dana, I think you're right. Dana did gasp.
because and they used the word pivot. That's the word they use in the scripts. He stood there, he was in shock. Well, he says he froze. And then Hannah's baby made a sound and kind of snapped him out of it.
Right.
And so that's when he
walked toward
pivoted.
Dana.
Yeah, he shot Dana and then pivoted back around. And when he got back, by that time, Hannah had raised up kind of up on her elbow and was looking at the door. And then that's when she gasped, and bam, he shoots her. And then he hears noises coming from Dana's room. So he goes back in there and pumps another one or a couple more into her, and then goes back in.
Yeah, because Dana was still alive.
Yeah.
So she was making noises. It's really sick. I mean,
Well, and because he didn't see any blood from Hannah, he goes back in and shoots her again. And then
and he like talks about it like, and then I was at Target and I decided I needed a gallon of milk. I mean, that's how he talks about it. Like, it's just very, I mean, at the time when I was reporting on it, I said he talks about murdering people like people talk about doing their laundry.
Right. That's where I was going, was when we were in the courtroom listening to this stone cold serial killer talk. This dude was talking like he was going out and buying a Coke and some popcorn. I mean, it was just rolling out, just flowing out, smooth. No emotion, no nothing. And, you know, it was mind boggling to listen to how easy it just flowed out. And listen, the fact that him and his, and I'm air quoting here, his brothers, he better keep his head on a swivel when he gets to where he's going, because he don't have no brothers where he's going. But
Yeah, I
that's
mean, he's been in county jails. I mean, he's been in county jails. He was in the Franklin County Jail. And so whatever life he has enjoyed at the county jail, that's I mean, I'm sure it's not nice. I've been in county jails, but I haven't been in a maximum security prison in Ohio, but I have been in Wisconsin when I worked up there. I mean, it's a whole lot different. I mean, I don't know if they'll send him to Toledo so he can be in protective custody until Billy's trial is over. But yeah, he's going to be, I mean, if they throw him in with like really hardcore gang people and stuff like that, he's going to a totally different world. Jake Wagner will be going to a place. I mean, they lived like this insular life in Pike County. He has no idea what he's in for.
no
I mean,
clue.
he is like, I mean, dude, you have no idea what you're about to get into in a maximum security prison in Ohio. You may be wishing you were on death row.
And, you know, I'll say this on top of that. If they keep him in state, he will go straight to protective custody. He will go
So you do
straight.
think they'll send him to Toledo?
Absolutely. Because it is so high profile, and really that's enough on by itself. But the fact that he's not a snitch on top of that, he'll go from CRC straight to Toledo. If they don't do the same thing they did with GW4 and send him out of state somewhere, which
I
cut
still don't get that. I still don't understand that, why they did that. I need to get some intel on that.
well, the DRC makes that decision. And again, it's a matter of it being such a high profile case. And, you know, just like Chris Watts, and as much as I hate saying that dude's name, that's why they got him out of Colorado, because nobody wants to take on inmates who they are going to be held liable for should something happen to them.
So, like, you've been following this case for years. I've followed it from the very beginning. We've got all this hoopla going on with Billy's trial. It's been delayed now after the judge didn't want it delayed, but the appeal delayed it. Now there are all these dates set, and I'm kind of confused. I'm going to put the judge's latest, the schedule document that he sent, where he added that other date in late May for a status hearing. So everybody, Billy's trial's on hold, as you know. It was supposed to be underway right now. There's a change of venue that's been granted, but the judge sent this schedule thing out, basically talking about how the attorneys should be prepared to talk about these other things. And I'm kind of confused because I'm like, oh, does he mean at all the upcoming hearings? He says, as a supplement to the court's scheduling order filed January 8th, in addition to dates previously scheduled, another pretrial conference / evidentiary hearing / trial preparation hearing is also scheduled for Friday, May 30th at 10 a.m. Counsel for all parties shall appear for all proceedings. He says the victim's attorney has to show up. She's not allowed to not show up. He said under advisement before the court is the defendant's motion seeking to limit other acts testimony. As has been argued, the question of necessity of for the evidence has been raised. The necessity for other acts evidence is somewhat influenced by the charges involved. Thus, the court advises counsel to be prepared to argue what charges, if any, could or should be severed from the indictment for separate trial. So he's basically saying maybe I guess that other acts evidence, if it's allowed, is not permissible for some of the charges. So some of these charges would have to be severed and there'd have to be a separate trial, which I never even thought of. Then he said counsel are encouraged to file particularized motions regarding issues to resolve in furtherance of adequate trial preparation, regardless of motions by the parties. The court expects counsel, the court, so that he wants to talk about this stuff. The court expects counsel to be prepared to orally argue the merits of the following topics: competency considerations, discovery compliance, technology needs during the trial, possible stipulations regarding trial facts. They could do a bunch of those and just like streamline things. They should have done that in George's trial. Defects to the indictment or in the indictment. Eric got bumped out of here somehow. I don't know how. Defense experts, waiver of trial by jury, media access, limitations and expectations, witness consent to photography, victim considerations, jury selection, other issues as may be raised. Okay, so Eric got bumped out of here. Hold on. I don't know how that happened. So he wants to bring all this stuff up. I'm going to wait for Eric to come back on to talk about this. So I find that very interesting. The whole waiver by trial by jury, waiver of trial by jury. So the possibility of a bench trial. I'm going to add Eric back. So Eric, he does say, he mentions these two things. He mentions in the same list, jury selection, and then also waiver of trial by jury. So he wants to see if Billy has considered doing a bench trial, but then later on it says jury selection. So he's talking about all these things, media access, limitations, and expectations. Well, I want to talk about that because Jake and Angela should not be allowed to opt out. And enough said.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on here that it's been kind of crazy.
Kick one of my boxes. Kick one of them out of the show.
What?
Kick one of my boxes out of the show.
Oh, kick from studio? Okay.
Yeah.
The other one said so the other box said you weren't connected. This one, you came back up in a separate box.
Okay. You got it. It's okay. It's fixed. I was getting feedback on my end. So, can you, if you don't mind, can you scroll back down there, because there's a couple of things on that list I wanted to touch on real quick. And I wanted to ask you too. The defects in the indictment.
I'm kind of like, did he read the indictment and feel that there were defects? Like, does he look at it and see problems in the indictment, like the way it was written?
But, well,
he's obviously, I mean, listening to him talk during the sentencing, he's obviously read George's trial transcript and been through the transcripts of Billy's pretrial hearings and stuff like that. So I feel like he's read materials.
Oh yeah, he has. I mean, there's no other way he would know.
This is why he gets up in the morning, he said.
Yeah. Well, and again, the bench trial, nobody since 2018 from any of the four of them, nobody has mentioned a bench trial. So this is all things and all his railroad tracks that he loves. He likes all these things going, and so this is him. Billy didn't ask for a bench trial, but I'm going to tell you right now, the state has no say so on whether or not that can happen or not. And I will promise you, this will be a bench trial.
Oh, you think that Billy will opt for a bench trial? That would be insane. I mean, maybe Billy will feel that after things that have transpired that he should roll the dice with a bench trial, but my goodness, I would think you'd be better off going with a jury, because something you and I kind of kicked back and forth. I looked up spousal privilege before we came on here, and I just skimmed it very briefly. Can Angela even testify against Billy? I was looking up spousal privilege in Ohio, and it says a witness spouse. This is something on this is on
Now she's referring to the competency considerations,
yes, and
y'all.
that's what it is. It's section here. How about I share my screen? Competency of witnesses, section 2945.42. So he's saying, hey, we have to talk about this. Because if you ever I'm sure you guys have all watched a TV show where this comes up, like on a Law and Order or something like that, like, oh, well, his wife can't testify against him, spousal privilege, blah, blah, blah. And that's basically what this whole competency, I think, because when I first read it, I was like, wait, Billy's not competent Billy seems pretty competent. Billy seems pretty competent. He's basically not helping his lawyers out at all. He's not willing to plead to anything. Like I know that just because I know stuff. Billy's pretty competent. I think he's fine, but it has to do with competency of witnesses. And so it says no person is disqualified as a witness in a criminal prosecution by reason of the person's interest in the prosecution as a party or otherwise, or by reason of the person's conviction of crime. Husband and wife are competent witnesses to testify in behalf of each other in all criminal prosecutions and to testify against each other in all actions, prosecutions, and proceedings for personal injury of either by the other, bigamy, or failure to provide for neglect or cruelty to their children under 18 years of age, or their child with a mental or physical disability under 21 years of age. A spouse may testify against his or her spouse in a prosecution under the provisions of, and then we've got links to other things. So I'm trying to skim here because I don't see bigamy. We're not talking about bigamy. We're not talking about cruelty to children. I'm skimming, guys. There's something about commission of a rape, sexual battery, gross sexual imposition. Because Angela talked about at George's trial, her discussions with Billy, like when they talked about stuff in the laundry room or they went outside in the by the truck or something. They would go and talk in the laundry room and turn the dryer on or something like that in case the place was bugged. Billy's always afraid places are bugged.
Super paranoid.
Yeah. I'm looking. Yeah, I don't see anything about homicide. So that's what he's talking about. I'd have to read this more carefully. I'm not going to sit here and read this to you guys and bore you to tears. But I'm sure Billy's lawyers, maybe they'll say, hey, that was his wife. You can't have her testifying against him. And, I never thought about it until now. So will she even be allowed to? maybe she will be able to. There are all these exceptions. I would have to click on them and go through them, and I'm not going to
Right. I
do
mean,
that while we're on here.
that's how I am. I don't go through and read all the case law. I mean, I did for the Vallow case, but I just hit a wall. And plus, like you said, people don't want to hear me
Yeah,
ramble
no, but
on
you
for
guys don't want
hours.
to hear us
hours.
talk about the Ohio Revised Code. I mean, come on. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Because Angie Canepa was worried that, oh, Jake and Angela, you sentence them and then I won't, basically she has no leverage to force them to testify. But both Jake and Angela's lawyers have said they plan to fulfill their duty or their obligation under the plea agreement to testify. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And Rita, Angela, my God. Well, Jake, I mean, for goodness sakes, he has parole eligibility in 32 years. I mean, that's an inducement right there to continue through with your deal, because then they can go to the parole board. And I don't think Jake Wagner ever gets out. Honestly, I don't see it ever happening.
No, he's not.
He
He's not.
conspired with his family. He carried out 8 murders, even though he says he only, he said not only, but he says he pulled the trigger in 5 of them. You killed 8 people. I mean, no way. No way.
Yeah,
Or is the parole board ever letting you out?
no. But like I said to somebody, I don't know who it was to. Maybe it might have been you. I don't know, when we were talking, but he's made it clear that he's going to do whatever he wants to do because he can. And he could have sentenced them any way he wanted to. He could have left one LWOP on there for Jake and then dismissed 7 of them.
Yeah, but it's like, what's the point? I mean,
what
would be the point? You can't dismiss the other. I mean, that would be like a slap in the face too, You can't dismiss the other homicide charges, aggravated murder charges,
But giving him a chance of parole in 32 years is a bigger slap.
Yeah, I was shocked. I literally was at work and I I was doing 2 other things while I'm listening to it, and I'm tweeting, and I asked people I work with, am I hearing this right? I had to question whether I was hearing it right because it was surprising. And then I've talked to other people who say, well, I've talked to some people on the other side of this who think, well, he did help the state, so he does deserve some consideration. He did deliver the firearms and told them about the truck. Nobody knew about the truck, until he told them about it. But still, I mean, it's shocking.
Yeah.
But it was shocking that Angela got 30 years. I mean, the 30 years for Angela was always too little. Like, come on. She was the puppet master.
I totally agree. Totally agree. But also,
and now she's mentoring young women.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I talked to some people who've been following this case who were like, Angela's mentoring young women? Really? Yikes. It's kind of scary. And she doesn't look very good. She really doesn't look well. So I'm not sure. I mean, she still has a long way to go. So I don't know if she'll make it the entire 30 years, but we'll see.
But he gave Jake an attaboy for basically, carrying the case.
Eric, will you take this for a second? My dog is going crazy. I think she has to. I think nature is calling.
Yeah,
I'll be right back. Okay.
Okay, I got it. But you know, he gave Jake an attaboy for flipping, and he came down hard on Angela for not making the phone call when she could have stopped it. But here's the thing, gang, and I know I seen Angela or Anjanette tweet it or say it in the chat. So did Billy. Billy gave them a chance. They pulled over at a pull-off area. And God, I would love to know where that pull-off area is. But he got out and went back and told and asked Jake and said, you know, I'm paraphrasing here, but this is the last chance. Do you still want to go through with it? And Jake says something along the lines, I have to protect my kid. So what do you sentence Billy to? Because I'm going to tell you right now, Billy and his attorneys, they have not received any new discovery since 2021. And you know why? Because there is none. There is no discovery to turn over. And, you know, Miss Canepa, we heard her in that one hearing that was actually an evidentiary hearing, or at least at the beginning of the hearing. She said that, there is we have no new evidence to turn over to them. So, what do you do?
Okay. So I don't know what you just said. The docket with Hip said that.
Well, what I was telling them was Billy and his attorneys have not received any discovery since 2021. And the reason for that is because there is nothing else to give them.
Wow. That's insane. This trial should have been they should have already done this trial. It should have been over with. I mean, seriously, like right after George's, they should have just rolled right into this one. I mean, yes, they had the new judge came on board, the one from Brown County who was retired, and then he had to get up to speed, and then I think he had like dementia or something, and he couldn't preside over the case anymore. And now that's how Hein came on board. But I mean, this trial should have been done. I mean, Deering couldn't do it; he was retiring. I mean, and I'm thinking back. I mean, good God, they have no discovery since 2021. That's nuts. You know what I think too? I was just thinking about this while I was taking care of the dog. Webby, there are time limits. Webby's asking, aren't there time limits? Yes, there are, but Billy and all of the others, they waived their speedy trial rights. So once you waive those, that's it. So, I'm thinking back too, like without Jake's testimony and without the guns and the truck, because nobody knew about the truck and the relevance of the truck. I mean, those relatives of Billy's who, Billy took the truck to the morning after or whatever and said, hey, I just thought you might want a truck. Without Jake and Angela's testimony, they don't have George's SKS, which theoretically places him at the scene. You could say that's a circumstantial piece of evidence that refutes possibly George's claim that he wasn't there. They don't have that. They don't have the truck. What do they have against George? Their case against George was probably pretty weak. I mean, they would have some really bad sounding wiretaps. Like the one that I think is the worst wiretap is where he tells Angela, where he said, "You and Dad always cave and always crumble, and I ain't caving and I ain't crumbling." And he didn't, he didn't. But he was right about Angela.
And it may have been in that same one that you're talking about, but he tells Jake that you're going to be the one that's going to take us all down, something along those lines, because you're weak, basically. You're weak, and you're going to be the one to end up getting us all smoked.
Well, they said that George said that George said that Jake always got them into trouble since they were little because he always told the truth or something like that.
Yeah. That's what it was. I have the transcripts. You have the transcripts of the wiretaps, but God, I haven't read those forever. But
yeah, I haven't either. I forget that some of those wiretaps were so ridiculously awful to listen to because they were so garbly.
Yeah.
But George is like, yikes. He's a scary dude.
George's biggest mistake. Now, listen, when you got your mom and your brother up on the stand testifying against you, you're not going to beat that to begin with, for number one. But then he somehow in his mind, he really thought that he was going to get up on the stand and make a difference. And wow.
Well, I think he had no choice, honestly, because you had them testifying against him. They had the wiretaps they were going to play. So the jury was going to hear from George being like a snarly, mean, kind of paranoid guy calling like, "Oh, BCI's at the house," and all of this. And, they were, they had Beth's testimony too. Beth's testimony, what didn't help George, but it's, George had no choice. He had to get on the stand. I mean, that's how I feel, because Jake and Angela were up there, but the state was not going to, all he could do is plead guilty and get life without parole. Like either way, he was toast because he had to roll the dice. Like, I think that was his thinking, because the state wasn't giving out any more deals. They didn't need him. He had no leverage. He should have pleaded first. I mean, he was a nervous wreck when they first arrested them and they would go to court. He was a nervous wreck. He was always like this at the defense table, like his fingers, he would like his thumbs, he'd be like doing stuff like this. He lost a bunch of weight. He was a mess.
Yeah. Yep. But it'll be, it's going to be a while before Billy goes to trial, and we don't know where it's going to be. We just know it's going to be somewhere far away. And it's just my opinion, but I firmly believe that this will end up in a bench trial.
I mean, we'll see. I mean, you could be right. I never ever thought about it.
Nobody did
Until that
nobody
document.
No, well, there's a bunch of stuff on there that nobody prepared for or was prepared for. And it wasn't because the defense asked for any of it. It's him throwing these suggestions out there. And I don't know, you may have had your dog outside, but I told him too, he came down hard on Angela because she didn't make a phone call. And then he gave Jake an attaboy because he flipped. But Billy also gave them a chance to not do it when they pulled off on that.
Yeah. And a lot of people here, unless you were in the courtroom for this, you may not know. Billy pulled over, according to Jake. There was like this, because if you're at Peterson Road where they are, it's still like a distance to drive to Union Hill Road. I mean, it's like 15 minutes or something. I'm not sure.
15 miles.
What's that?
15 miles. That's what I was telling him. I would love to know what pull off it is.
He allegedly pulled off somewhere and went to the back of the truck and pulled the truck bed down and said, like, are you sure you want to go? You sure you want to do this? Like, are you sure you want to go through with this? And I guess they were all like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Jake says something.
Billy could have just been like, guys, we're not doing this. This is,
right.
Guys, this is crazy.
Right. And so taking Angela's sentence into consideration, Jake's sentence into consideration, GW4's sentence into consideration, where do you put Billy in there with that? Since Jake's or George's sentence and Angela's sentence is the problem, where do you put Billy in there in that sentencing? I don't know. He gave him an opportunity to stop.
Yeah.
And Jake said, I have to protect my kid.
Yeah, from the imaginary fear of possibly maybe being sexually abused or whatever. So weird.
And listen, something else that you mentioned, I have not, obviously, you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. I cheated to get through kindergarten.
I doubt that.
No, I literally stole my buddy's coloring picture to pass a class. But how do you I lost what was I getting? What were we talking about? I lost my train of thought.
I don't remember.
Well,
you said that I had been doing this a lot longer than you.
Yeah, I've lost my train of thought. I lost it. I should have never mentioned the kindergarten thing because, and it was important too. It was important, but it's gone. I mean, just bam, that quick.
Okay, can we touch on something right here I'm seeing in the chat? So Skady, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm so sorry if I'm saying your screen name wrong. He's talking, Skady is talking about the whole thing about Frederica, the rumor that she's an heir to the Procter & Gamble fortune. Procter & Gamble is a big company in Cincinnati, in case you're from another country. They make Tide laundry detergent, Ivory soap. So it's a really big company. And people were always saying that she was an heir to that fortune. I've never been able to verify that, and neither have other people, but that rumor's always been out there. But she's very wealthy, and the way they made their money was they sold horses. And I just saw miniature horse caught my eye. Bob, Frederica's husband, he developed a special breed of horse. It's some kind of Frisian Grand. Let me look it up. It's on the internet. Frisian Grand So they had these like they had a very successful horse farm. Plus, she owned a lot of rental properties. Frisian Grand, Bob Wagner.
She was a slum lord.
Yeah, here's this Frisian Cross, Georgian Grand. So that's what they developed. Here, I'll share my screen again. So he came up with this special breed of horse. That's not the miniature horse. Are you guys talking when you say a miniature horse crazy? Are you talking about the one that died in the fire? Because there was a big fire. They had a big fire. Here, let me share my screen. They had a big fire at one of their barns or something, and I think that Blue Baby or Blue Bell was the name of the horse. One of her prized horses was killed. So let's see. Oh, and they sell these pigs too. But the Georgian Grand horses is what Bob Wagner developed. He came up with the breed of horse. So I guess he took a couple of breeds of horses and crossed them or mixed them. And that's how he did this. Oh, they must be out of stock.
I'd say the site's probably been shut down, hasn't it?
Miniature horses for sale. Can you guys see it? Yeah, looks like they've got some Flying W Farm Blue Boys Dreams May Come. So here's something for sale. That's a miniature horse. Little Blue Boy. This is the one I think that was killed in the fire. But yeah, the Frisian Grand, whatever, Frisian Georgian Grand is what Bob Wagner developed. So that's where they got their money. Their property is amazing. I went up there one time. This was right after the May 13th or 12th search warrant in 2017. I was like, well, I guess we're going to have to go to the Flying W. I guess we should go up to the Flying W. Like, and I didn't know what we would get when we got up there, but we drove up and the driveway's super steep. We were in the satellite truck and we had no cell service. And we drove up the hill. It was really like a steep gravel driveway. We got up top. My photographer, Dan, turned around at the time. And there was like Bob Wagner was really sick. He was dying. And there was like a medical van there. Somebody was obviously coming in each day to provide care. Maybe it was hospice or something, but it was some type of medical van. And I got out of the truck, the satellite truck, to see if anybody would talk with us because we saw people, obviously there were people there, workers, farm workers. It was like a really beautiful property. It was really, really pretty. And I got out and there were these dogs barking at me. And this guy came out and he was like, you have to leave, get out of here. He wasn't like totally rude, but forceful. And I was like, okay, we just wanted to see if anybody wanted to say anything, and that whole thing. And that was it. And then we drove away. So there you have it.
Who was that guy? Do you know?
I don't know. It was just some guy, just a guy in a hat. I don't know who it was. Like some worker person who worked there.
Interesting.
Oh, Skady says we used to have church gatherings up there, and Bob would have the horses saddled up to take their kids for rides on them. Interesting.
Skady, I'm not sure who you are, but you have an awful lot of insight.
Skady, I'm sorry. I don't know if you're a guy or a girl. I apologize. Skady said Freddie bought my grandparents' church when they passed away. That is the one she moved to her property. Okay, so that church because I went to that. If you go back up around the back of the Flying W, there is that church. I can't remember exactly where it is, but the church is back there. And that's the church that Frederica, Billy's mom, runs. She runs a church.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Eric, obviously you guys know Eric was in the documentary that was on Peacock.
Yeah.
Oh,
Tennessee.
Skatey's a girl. Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure. I apologize. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Skatey says I'm a Cyrus. I'm looking at all your comments, guys. So Mel Max says this judge will make it a bench trial, in my opinion. Well, it's not up to him. Billy has to waive his right to a jury trial. So, I mean, Billy has to ask for it. But I guess like he could always ask Billy, "Hey, do you want a bench trial?" I mean, I don't know. Maybe Mark Collins and Caitlin Stevens have already talked to him about this.
But no, but they haven't. It's never been mentioned until this judge came on the case. They've never motioned for it. They've never.
Well, because I think it's really unusual in a first of all, if it's a death penalty case, which, the way Angie Canepa had this all laid out, you have to seat the death penalty jury that you're not going to need, and then and then remove the death specs, which to me seems like madness. It seems nutty. But that's how she set this whole thing up. That's how she had it running. But if you do a bench trial for a death penalty case, it's a 3-judge panel. It's not just one judge. And then what do you do if you do a bench trial for a 3-judge panel and then remove the death specs? I mean, what do you do? Like the 3 judges then decide it? Or, I mean, that would be goofy. So I think it's unusual. I've seen death penalty cases where there are 3-judge panels. One happened up in Butler County with the Gurpreet Singh case. It happens, but it doesn't happen often.
But if they don't testify,
I think they'll testify.
Wouldn't he stand a better chance in front of 3 instead of 12?
Not 3 judges.
Well, if one of them already has shown that he doesn't agree with anything the state has done in this case, and he hasn't agreed with anything the 2 prior judges have done in this case either. I mean, he came in and ripped everything up they've done. And if you have him, and now I didn't know that it was 3. So yeah, that does make.
Well, only if it's a death penalty case. And right now it's not. But if they were seating the death penalty, okay, if the death specs were still in place, which right now they're not, and he had said, I want a bench trial, it would be 3 judges. But then the way that deal was set up back then, the death penalties, the death specs get removed once Jake and Angela testify. I mean, it would be goofy. It's just kind of goofy. I'm sorry, it's goofy. The Sandy was asking how do I find this documentary? It's on Peacock. Peacock is a streaming service.
Or it's on Oxygen.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's on Oxygen, and Peacock. It's a 3-part series. They done a fantastic job with it. They did a fantastic job with it.
I think I watched the first 1 or 2 episodes and then didn't watch the last one until much later. It was kind of one of those things because of when it came out. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. There's a hearing this week, I think, for Billy.
24th. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a hearing.
We'll have to reconvene after that.
There's a hearing for every month, and then the May 30th hearing, which is the one that you just had up there that has the list. So, you know, when I mean, obviously we don't know, but what's your guesstimate when this goes to trial?
Oh, I have no idea. I I don't even know about the appealing on the death specs. I mean, they've been sentenced. It's done. I mean, so it's done. Like part of your leverage, your so-called leverage over Jake and Angela, like part of that is gone. So just withdraw the appeal and go forward. That's kind of how I look at it. I have no idea. I mean, this appeal has certainly delayed things. I don't even know if anything's been filed in that so far. So, because the whole thing about the death specs, it was all like to hold the death penalty over their head. Oh, well, your whole deal falls apart. Your whole deal falls apart if you don't testify to the satisfaction of the state. The whole thing falls apart, and then you all get put on death row. You know, I mean, except Angela, who got the 30 years, because this was Jake's deal, not Angela's. So what's the point in appealing this anymore? That's how I look at it.
Well, it's in the 4th district, right?
Yes.
That's the one that's being, no, there has been no briefs filed. There has been nothing filed that I've been able to find.
I mean, it takes a bit to write a brief.
You know, there's the only appeal stuff that I have is George's, and you know, I don't know. Do you think he'll get another crack at the trial?
Who, George?
GW4?
I only skimmed part of that today. I was reading some of it. I have to look at the rest. I'm not sure. I mean, it sure took an awful long time. It felt like that trial should have maybe lasted 6 weeks, and it was 10. And there was a lot of I don't know. I can't say because I would have to read the documents. I don't know. I mean, he testified, so that kind of hurts him. But I will see. We shall see. But I think we'll have to wrap this up for now. We'll have much more to talk about, I think, after the hearing on the 24th.
It'll be interesting to see, you know, what all plays out for each one of these hearings. But you know, he has made it known that the only people that matter in that room is him and his decisions. So it's going to be his way, and that's the only way. But that's all we can do is wait and see how it plays out.
Yep. Yes, I think you're right. We just have to wait and see how it plays out. I don't know. I tend to think that the Ohio Supreme Court, this is my opinion only. I could be totally wrong, but I think the Ohio Supreme Court was like, I think they want this done. That's my opinion.
Right. Well, I mean, you're not on an island. I mean, I've gotten lots of feedback from people in chat whenever I do lives on it. There's some that, you know, say the same things, but, you know, and my opinion as you know, is, you know, it happened in 2016. Rita didn't flip till 2018. Jake didn't, and then you had COVID. Or I'm sorry, they were arrested in 2018. Rita didn't flip until 2019. Throw COVID in there, throw family deaths in there. Jake didn't flip until 2021, and then Angela didn't flip until September of 2021. And within a year, the first trial was going on and did happen. So, you know, there's and plus three different judges that have been on this case. So I know it, yeah, it's been a long time since it happened, but there's a lot of reasons in there why that it's taken this long to get to where we're at. And that, you know, that's just one thing that I try to make clear to my folks is, you know, a death penalty trial for one person is probably what, 4 or 5 years, Antoinette, for just one person, for one victim.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on the type of case. But I just think they could have moved pretty quickly into Billy's case. It's just all this hoopla about him waiving double jeopardy on the death specs and blah 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 and all that. I mean, that nobody's going to agree to that. He's basically would have to co-sign and sign on to Jake's plea agreement. It's so silly. Like he was never going to do that. He was never going to do that. So it was never happening.
No, he's not going to, and he's made that perfectly clear. His attorneys made it perfect. He is not going to accept any deal.
Correct.
So I don't know. We will see. We will see.
Yes, we will. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out. And we shall do this another time. Eric, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you for having me, and hopefully we can do it again when we get more info and watch it play out together.
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Skady, for everybody's thanking Skady for her insight. Thank you. It's interesting to hear from you. All right, everybody, have a great night and a great Sunday. I will be I was thinking about doing something on the inauguration on Monday. I know that's not a court type thing, but I used to cover politics and I really enjoyed it, but I don't know if I'll be doing that. It's going to be so cold in Washington, D.C., so I probably won't. I'll be home, but everybody have a great night and a great weekend.
All right. Thanks, Ant.
All right. See ya. Bye.